Epic Loop Radio. Epic Loop Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Epic Loot Radio. Brian and Kirk here with a special guest today, J-Dub. I don't know if you got any other content than Twitter, but I have been following you, and you have been a consummate source of entertainment on Twitter. And we've had a lot of really good discussions, and I'm really glad that you're able to join us today because we're going to be talking about PalWorld, Prince of Persia, the state of Xbox, the state of PlayStation, what your outlook is here for 2024. So I'm going to give you the show floor right out the gate, Jay. Like, what are you playing and what should people know about you and where can they find you? And then we'll just get into the full podcast.
Thanks for the invite. I'll tell you what, man, it's just been on Twitter and been on YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel. I hadn't made content for it for a couple of months, but every now and then I get into a little mode where I actually want to do some content and I'll jump in there and do some stuff, some comedy and upload some stuff and ruffle some feathers. My character on Twitter, so it's, so some of you guys, and I'll do this, I'll show you my logo. So if you ever seen my logo on Twitter, I'm the bane of a lot of people's misery for whatever reason. The Great Console War. Again, thanks for the invite. Welcome everybody in the chat. I tried out PalWorlds this past weekend. I just beat a game I played. It's called I beat the first one. It was called Into the Moon, and then the second one was into Mars.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good game. Of course, I beat Final Fantasy 16. That was my goatee for last year. That was my goatee. I know you're still playing that.
No, I just finished it. I haven't done the DLC
you just finished
yet.
it. Okay.
They have another DLC that's scheduled to come later, and I was like, I might just.
There's two DLCs. There's one that's out now, and then another one that's coming out in March.
Exactly. So I'm writing kind of an updated review about my thoughts on 16 because, like, we talked about it when I was live, and thanks for hanging out with me on that. But it was like, where I started the year with Final Fantasy 16 and then where I ended the year, just how my perceptions of that game have changed. And I want to, and this is like, okay, I know they have a DLC out, but I'm going to treat the story like there isn't any DLC. And then I'm going to step into that and be either shocked or surprised or, that's what I'm looking forward to. But 16, dude, was good. Was really good.
That was my goatee for last year. And it was, I didn't have any qualms with any of those games. I beat Alan Wake 2. I mean, pretty much all the goatees or all the goatee contenders I've played and I've beat. So I had no qualms with Final Fantasy 16. It was just a great year last year for gaming. I mean, you can't go wrong no matter, what was there. Spider-Man 2, great game. I can see why some of the newer games kind of overlapped it because everyone thinks, oh, it's Spider-Man. Of course it's great. Of course but it's the same. And so now we have newer games that come out. Alan Wake 2 was a surprise. It kind of surprised me. It really surprised me. I enjoyed the story. Great. What else have I been playing? I've been playing a lot of VR. Especially,
oh, really?
Yeah. I'm a big GT7 racer, esports racer. I also been doing Flight Simulator, Microsoft Flight Simulator. Can't wait for 2024 version. And last but not least, I'm into DCS World, which is a combat flight simulator. So a lot of times you guys see me posting things like my racing simulators, my flight simulators, and stuff like that on Twitter.
Nah, I only see you posting one thing.
Oh yeah, the love for Xbox, right? The love for Xbox.
Yes. So much love for Xbox.
In between tweets, every now and then, I'll post some a little bit stuff about me. and not just to being an antagonizer.
Have you tried the Crew Motorfest, or do you really only
Yes.
go into like the
Yep.
racing sims?
I bought it on Xbox. Now here's the thing. I'm a huge simulation fan. But I dabble into the arcade stuff, but a lot less than the simulation. And for those of you know, I've owned every single Forza Motorsports known to man, every single GT known. And I try to explain and educate people the difference between the two, the difference between a simulation and a simcade in a arcade game. There is the middle, which is the simcade. That's where Forza Motorsports sit. And I was hoping, because I have a racing simulator, Forza racing simulator. I was hoping that they would take more of the simulation approach. There is just no room for the in-between. You have to be diehard arcade. That's where the Forza Horizon dominates. That's what it's for. That's what speed is for. Then you have the GT Sports, the GT7, GT Sports, the Assetto Corsa Competition and iRacing. Those are full-on simulations. But then in the middle, you have Forza Motorsport that try to cater to both crowds. And guess what? When you cater to both crowds, neither crowd want you.
Yeah.
It's too hardcore for a person to pick up a controller and just race, because you have to learn the apex. You have to learn your breaking points and things like that. That's too
Gran
complex.
Turismo is the same thing.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, and I don't want to go on a rant.
The love for Xbox starts already.
Well, no, I'm just being honest. As a sim racer, as a iRacing guy, as a Assetto Corsa competition guy, it's hard for me to get my friends into Forza Motorsport, because they don't like Forza Horizon. You get a controller and you just hit the right trigger. Just to hit gas. You don't have to hit brakes at all. You can have fun, jump hills, jump mountains, do whatever you want to just have fun. It takes no skills. Well, if you try that same thing in Forza Motorsport, you know where you're going to end up? Last place. You're not going to have any enjoyment at all.
But what I'm asking is, what is that? I would describe Gran Turismo the same way. What do you see as the difference between those two franchises?
Well, GT caters towards think about it. It has to cater towards the simulation side, because it's a esport game. It's an Olympic sport, right? It's nobody, most people who have GT Sport, they have a racing wheel. Not saying you can't be competitive with a controller, but it's designed for a wheel. And if you ever tried it in VR, it'll bring you to tears how realistic it is. Not only because of car setups, not only because the tracks, not only because the internal focus. They created this game with a specific focus on mind, and that's being a simulator. In order for you to be successful, you have to learn those apexes. You have to learn those corners. If not, you're going to end up in last place. And to add to that, the fact that they brought Sophie, the advanced AI that you're racing against, that actually beat some of the fastest esports racers in the world. The fact that they brought that to the game makes it where even when you play the AI, it's like you're playing a real competitor, and that just opens up the enjoyment for most people who are kind of tired of taking it online, because they either get beat or they're too advanced, they're not advanced enough, but they still want to be competitive with the computer. So there is some differences there.
What is AI not coming for now?
Oh yeah.
Hey, I don't know what the pushback is about AI. For some reason, people cry when you bring up AI.
Oh my gosh, dude.
It's like, dude, if you're going to have artificial intelligence, why not use it for gaming what it's intended for? Why not cut your development time down? Do you really need to duplicate all these assets by hand, or can you use AI to replicate? As a gamer,
I'm so glad you say that, because as a developer, I'm looking at it going, I think people are doom and glooming it, and it's a human reaction. Because there are going to be jobs that are no longer needed, but new jobs will come up in its place.
Created.
Well, and especially when we talk about the state of gaming, it's that when I look at what's, the leaks for Sony, 380 million budget for Spider-Man 3.
For a single player game.
I have an immense amount of respect for PlayStation. I feel like they've earned their quality label, because they allow games the time so that they can deliver that. And I do think it's a double-edged sword, because if they ever let that slip, all of a sudden this reputation they built is like, wait a minute, like I expect a PlayStation game to do X, Y, and Z, but 380 million.
Yeah.
You're like, that's a lot of sell through. That I'm just like, oh man, like it gives me heartburn and stress, and I'm not even, and it's not even my money that they're putting out on the table.
They are one of the only studios out there next to Take-Two, of course, Rockstar with but they're one of the only ones who are willing to invest that amount of money that's not in a games as a service game that you have to keep bringing the revenue back. They're saying, listen, we're spending, a huge amount of our investment on a single player game. We're hoping that you go out and buy it so we can recoup the money, make a little bit of profit, but we kind of have to do it because we're known for the big blockbuster Transformer, Michael Bay splash when it comes to game. If nobody else is out there doing it, who else is going to do it? And if Sony stopped doing it, like you said, they lose their identity, and then where they're going to be without that identity? Once they go, once they stop with the single player AAA games, I honestly think that'll be it for them. They lose. That's it, because
I do think AI will end up helping out a lot. And just to bring up Light No Fire, because I can't stop talking and being excited about that game. While it's probably not all generative AI, but procedurally generated worlds and things like that really help reduce dev time. And what you see is that they announced their Light No Fire team is 12 people. What we've lost over the course of AAA games, like when we look at the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s, and then now we're in the 2020s, the scale of the teams has gotten bigger and bigger. So the risk has gotten bigger and bigger. And as much as we wish companies were human beings and had the same carriers, the things that we cared about, they don't. And so they had to, how do we mitigate this risk? And so the complaint tends to be, especially outside of like Sony first party, is that these big games, they're just not doing anything special. They're not pushing the limits. And it's like they have to pull that back, because we've seen time and time again, pushing that limit, taking that risk could mean no sales. And so where we've seen innovation come in the industry and games is usually from the quote unquote indie. And I know we've been debating a couple of podcasts, like, is Baldur's Gate 3 an indie development team? Like, they're really big, but at the same time, independent from, any big publisher. So they have a lot more freedom and control of their destiny. So that's where it's like, I look at AI being something that could be more additive in terms of, especially in testing, right? Like when I write code, I'll never find it. Like everything works. Every test I could think of works. But the AI doing that, QA on it could be like, you didn't try this, and here's the 1,000 things that I thought to do that you didn't think to do, and here's how I broke your game.
It's overreaction by gamers, not only about the AI, but the whole stigma about crunch. For some reason, gamers have it in their head, crunch is bad. Some of the best games we've ever gotten came because of crunch. And here's the thing about it.
That doesn't mean that it's warranted, though.
No. Listen, and listen. I have a job. You have a job. You have a job. Mm-hmm. We crunch all the time, and guess what? No one weeps for us. This is
but when we talk about crunch in the gaming industry, we're talking about people pulling like 120-hour weeks. It's very
compensated though. If they're
if you're paying
but it's obligatory. I don't think we want to get into a crunch debate on this show, because there's a lot of people and a lot of families that are very adversely affected by it. It's roundly understood to be a very bad industry practice, and that's why the vast majority of the industry and the games media coverage industry is against it.
Only when the game isn't good. When the game is good.
No, when the game is good, people still don't like that.
No, they don't. They don't complain at all. They say, thank you so much, give me another one.
All GOTY winners had crunch. Think about it. You start a project, right? Knowing a game. This game is in development for 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, whatever. For that length of time, you're going to be dedicated on this particular project. Some days in the beginning, it's going to be slow because you're wrapping up with development, motion capturing. You're starting it up with, layouts of the artwork from concept all the way to the end. Most people, majority of that crunch time is generally at the end when you're trying to hurry up and hit that date. And that date generally comes from the marketing department. They've spent those big bucks on marketing this game. Now, you have to hurry up and try to finish this game so it can hit that date.
Right. So don't do that.
So
like that's the solution. Don't do that.
That's the easiest thing
to
say.
It's easy to say when think about it.
As a developer, like
this game,
great. That we all want to get there, but like the reality is, like it doesn't matter who you are. The biggest studios with all the data and knowledge still miss their estimates by 4x. Like that's actually like when you actually study, you know, like what people project and what actually happens, it always is more than you can anticipate, and that's just the nature of it. But there's a project management piece to it. Like I would divide the concept of unnecessary crunch versus crunch, or in the same kind of vein, like, are you getting compensated? Are you also now getting time off? Because I've worked in crunch environments where we had to crunch for 4 weeks and then we all got a week off that was just paid, and we're just like, all right,
well,
we don't
if
show
you think
up
about it,
it's
if you think about it, it's overtime. I mean, the average person out there has a regular job, crunches all the time. They work overtime. They're compensated for it. Nobody cries for them. This is the video game industry where people are paid a lot more than the average Joe Blow who's working overtime in his job.
In dev,
and nobody's crying for them.
In dev, though, that like game devs do get paid like dramatically less, maybe by 20 to 30K a year. And the only thing I push back on that is like where I do side with Kirk is that one of the key pillars of being a game dev versus an application dev, it has to be passion. And we've seen companies like EA and all these abuse the passion of their developers, paying them less, making them work crazy hours, and ultimately ends up being like, if you ever heard the concept of a cut class, where you have like a class in college that is designed to get as many people out. Like it's like the next class after this is much easier. This is going to be so intense that if you don't make it, then we don't want you, you know, as a part of this school or something like that. But
absolutely. And listen, again, I am not advocating at all for any corporation to abuse their employees, to overwork them. No one is doing that, and I don't want to put that out there. But what I will say is, when you're in a multi-billion-dollar industry where the pay for a lot of developers and a lot of those people are higher than the average Joe Blow, a lot of people are compensated well. A lot of people go into a project knowing that, hey, this project is going to take 3 or 4 years of my life. Towards the end, sometime when we're missing deadlines, sometime when we have E3 or some kind of event coming along, we need to crunch and get this sizzle reel out. We need to, you know, there's deadlines. Every company has a deadline that they have to meet. And if that means you have to work some overtime,
but if your deadline means that your personnel are having to work 120 hours a week, you set a bad deadline. Like that's called bad management.
Well,
that's bad management is what we've seen so much of over the last year, with so many people getting laid off, and then people are saying they're recording record profits. Bungie just hired more people, I think. I saw in a report. I don't know if that's accurate. It may not be.
Well, but like the companies will hire and fire, like, and that's
all the time. Like, there's contract.
And so it just what I'm advocating for is labor practices on the part of these big companies that are pro labor. And so when you're talking about, oh, crunch is just a part of the business practice, no, it's not. Cyberpunk didn't have to come out when it did. Like people crunched for that game because they tried to put that game out a year before it was ready.
Crunch for Cyberpunk.
Yeah, and then they did. So we should hold companies like that accountable. And the way to do that is to say crunch is not mandatory. It's not compulsory. You can do your business model and set up your marketing and deadlines so that you don't have to do this to your workers. To say, oh, I'm in favor of businesses not abusing their workers, but also sometimes they're going to have to crunch, that's not accurate. Like you should be against any type of overuse, overworking of the labor force, or you're just not. Like if you want to say both, you're just talking out of two sides of your mouth at that point.
It's disingenuous. It's really disingenuous to say we have to hold them accountable. The only way you can hold a corporation accountable is with your wallet. So if you go out there and buy that Cyberpunk,
I didn't go out and buy Cyberpunk.
No, I didn't say you. I'm not talking to you per se. We're just having this discussion just generically. Consumers speak with their wallets. I'm a firm believer in that. If I don't like something that someone is doing, if I don't like AI being put in their game, AI art, if I don't like certain music, a lot of people didn't like Hogwarts Legacy because of its issues that they had going on with the lady or whatever. And to say that,
I like it. I like that way of describing it.
I don't want to. I don't even.
Yeah, you're good.
You know what I mean. To say it with our mouths that, and then there was this big rah-rah about the game, and it ended up being the most profitable game, the most sold game of 2023. That says there's a lot of frauds out here who speak with their mouth publicly, but behind the scene, they're playing the same game that had crunch, that had all the stuff that they complained about. So the only way I can be effective with these corporations and let my feelings known is by not buying and supporting their game. And that's unfortunate because you're still impacting those developers, right? Those developers need a paycheck. Your dollars pay their salary. So it's, what are you going to do? I mean, at this, I'm looking for a solid solution outside of just you telling me in general.
I honestly,
they can unionize, I guess,
but that's going to have to be on them. Like there's,
that has
and there's pros and cons to unions. So like it's
absolutely,
it's not enough to say like you have to be on one side or the other. It's like there are shades of gray in all of these things. And so it's like, my thing is that, as I always advocate, and I tell people, especially in the industry, is like, get yourself into a position of leverage, and then you can't be abused. One of the biggest abuses that happen to everyday employees is they live in this world of debt, and then they have to go to work, and they're just like, and they have to go to work, and then they're going to take whatever their boss gives them. I had a friend who was like, I just got $1,000 a year raise after bringing in $600,000 for the company. It's like, that's an insult. You're the top earning guy, and they're only going to give you that much more. Like, no. And the only way you could push back. So leverage is the most like individually responsible thing that any employee can do. Otherwise, you got to do collective bargaining. And I like, what do I'm not gonna sit and wait on my hands until they decide what they want. In this regards, it's just gonna be.
You don't have to when you have AI. Yeah, it completely takes any leverage that the labor force has. So that's why it's dangerous, because basically you have two alternatives. Both are pro corporation. One is we hire you and overwork you to get our game out when we want to, and the second is we just don't have to hire you at all because we have a computer make it for us.
Yeah, and if that's why people are opt into the system, then you just don't buy the games. Like if they don't sell games, then they're
sure. And we'll see if the problem exacerbates and get worse. If J-Dub has a point, will people get behind the overworked devs, or will they just be like, oh, I want my Red Dead Redemption 2 and Cyberpunk, and I don't really care? We'll see.
Okay, and I'll be honest. I'll be honest, guys. I'm a gamer. I care about the games. I can't police every corporation out there. I can only police the corporation.
You can't also care about 10,000 people. Like, 10,000 people got laid off. It's like, to say that you care about them, it's like, that sucks. That's a perfectly fine thing. But to care about like 10,000 people you don't know, that's virtual signaling.
Is empathetic? Like what?
No, it's virtual signaling.
No,
you
it's
cannot
not.
directly care about 10,000 people individually who got laid off. You could say that sucks. This is how I'm going to change my behavior.
With their predicament.
Empathize means that you feel what they feel.
Yeah, anybody feels that.
Means that you're like, oh, I feel bad for that. That sucks, but you don't feel it on an individual level. Like Kirk, if you lost your job, the empathy and sympathy that I have for you would be direct. It would be real. But if all of a sudden I hear all of these different legal forms, laid off 10,000 people, like I'd be like, man, that sucks. I don't know who they like. I don't have any relationship with them, and to say and to pretend otherwise online is just virtue signaling.
Their development teams have been laying off people. Yeah, they've been hiring, but they've been laying off as well. The beginning of last year, somewhere around March, Microsoft laid off 10,000 people at one time. 10,000 people.
Yeah.
There was mostly crickets behind that. And I get it. Microsoft is a huge corporation. They employ hundreds of thousands of people. But when you lay off 10,000 people at one time, and it's a blip on the radar, and all of a sudden, we say we care about crunch, we care about this, and we care about all of these corporate issues, what are we to do? I mean, like I said, as a gamer, all you can really do is support with your dollars, and that's it. Sure, we don't like developers who create great games get laid off. We don't like teams to get laid off. We don't like studios that get closed down and things like that. We don't like that. I mean,
I don't like when Epic produces record-breaking profits and they have the most successful IP on the market right now, and they lay off.
And they continue.
Well, yeah, and you can obviously tell what my opinion on that is by the way this discourse is going.
Yeah,
you guys want to talk about some games?
Absolutely.
We are talking about
you
games.
love games, right? You love games.
I love games.
Ginger love games.
Yeah.
Did y'all play some PalWorld over the weekend?
So I installed PalWorld and I have not touched it, but I have seen just the online excitement
just
for
rabid.
it.
Yeah.
And my tweet, because it's a perfect transition from what we were talking about into this. I say the thing I love the most about the console wars is the hypocrisy. You know, it's like
bingo.
And I'm like, all right, I will check it out because I did download it because it is on PC Game Pass. But a part of me also like if Game Pass, I love it. It's great, especially as like somebody was like, why do you like Game Pass? I'm like, how many kids do you have? And they're like, touche. Like we play a ton of games here in this family because of Game Pass. But I was like, great, I'm gonna check it out. I just didn't because I've been fighting bronchitis all weekend. And for anybody who is interested, it is my kryptonite. Like it takes me out. Like there's nothing I can do. I'm just like, I'm down for the count. So I didn't play any video games this weekend, but going into the weekend, I was able to spend some time with Prince of Persia. But I'm excited to see it because it brings up like the narrative around the game. I don't care about the console war stuff, but the narrative around this game is that is Pokemon like isn't it like Nintendo? People keep asking for more out of the Pokemon franchise, and this is or could be competition, or it could just be the flavor of the week. And next week we're all playing Grand Blue Fantasy Relink and PalWorld. What? So I'm kind of in a wait and see camp. I am enjoying their success. Like when it comes down to it, especially if they're a dev team that's passionate, like I wouldn't mind tossing them $30 because why not? Like that. I like to support things that I think are worthy of that support. But yeah, that's where I'm at. Did you, Jay, or did you, Kirk, get to play PalWorld this weekend?
I did. I got to play it not only on my Xbox, but I played it on my Asus ROG Ally to see how it runs and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's not really my cup of tea. I try to get my kids involved.
It's not mine either, actually.
I tried to see if my kids would take up and they played it for about 5-10 minutes. And
how old are your kids?
Yeah, my kids are 8 and 11.
Okay, so we're right in the same ballpark because I was like, I'm always just like, are they ready for this kind of game? We've been stepping into Smash Brothers and a couple of other Nintendo games, but
my kids are into Roblox. Is everything for them.
Roblox. Yeah.
Between Roblox and Minecraft, and they've kind of dropped Minecraft, and Roblox is just the end all be all. And that and Rust on PC. But I try to introduce them to new games to see would it uptick. And the consensus I have is, Dad, just because it looks like Pokemon and just because it's a cartoony game doesn't mean that we want it. And it's I don't know. It's not my game. It's not for me.
If it was Pokemon, do you think they'd be more interested?
I'll be honest. Yes, I do.
I would. And so I can encapsulate this for you perfectly, Brian. Since you haven't played, I can sort of give my 2 cents or my like podcast review, if you would, of this game as somebody who doesn't like it. I think that caveat is important, and I don't like it as like not critically. I don't like it. Like it's not like I would review this and say it's not good.
Right?
Yeah, it's not for me, and I totally get why it's for a lot of people. And so the reason it's not for me is I grew up with Pokemon. I played the handheld games. I grew up right around that Fire Red, Leaf Green, Ruby Sapphire era. And just that whole lineage of games going into Diamond and Pearl and X and Y, like all those. I think everybody loves those games, almost everybody. And then once it got to Switch, people had certain ideas because, like you say, Brian, it's like this is really just a handheld console with a TV, output. Yeah. But people are viewing it as
Switch, but Nintendo is like, we're a powerhouse in handhelds. Oh, have you seen the Switch? Like it's just them doing the thing that they were good at, and they got out of the their blue ocean. They went like, oh, Microsoft and Sony, we can't outspin them.
Yeah.
People perceive it as a traditional console because you hook it up to your TV.
Yeah.
And so people got a lot of ideas with expectations about what Pokemon was going to be. And Nintendo and Game Freak continue to put out basically the exact same game that they've always put out. Now, I will say with Scarlet and Violet, that had some performance-related issues. You can't be doing that. You know, Zelda runs perfectly
Switch is like
fine.
8 years old, 7 years old. Like it's
but they know how to optimize their games for their hardware for other properties. It comes off a little bit lazy when it comes to the Pokemon franchise.
Because they're the only company that can get away with it.
It's like the worst running game that's like high profile on Switch.
Tears of the
It's
Kingdom?
like the No. I'm saying Tears of the Kingdom is a good example. Scarlet and Violet is one of the worst, if not the worst running AAA game. I'm saying Tears of the Kingdom proves that's lazy. Yeah, that's lazy.
Pokemon, it's like, we'll put it out.
I mean, Pokemon sells gangbusters.
20 frames a second on Tears of the Kingdom on Switch. I'm like, you can only do so much. And I think Zelda still shows the age of the hardware.
No, but I don't know if you've seen. I don't know if you've seen footage of Scarlet and Violet, but it looks bad. The anti-aliasing is bad. It runs poorly.
And it kept me from picking it up. I saw that, and that was the critique, and I was like, my kids aren't asking for it. I'm just gonna we already have a Pokemon game. We'll keep playing that one. Yeah.
But even if that wasn't an issue, both of those games or pairs of games, I guess, because they release the 2 at a time, Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet, they're really, really iterative of X and Y and Black and White and the games that came before. It's just that the camera's kind of pulled back in third person. You can kind of run around, and there's like various different viewpoints. It's just kind of giving you a few more angles, a little more variants of the same old, tried and true formula. And people are like, what the heck is this? I want, now that we see games like God of War and stuff where they take an IP and they completely revamp it and evolve it. I think people were looking for something on, what they consider to be a flagship console. And really these games have been incredibly iterative since like the early 2000s. So the fan base for I think Pokemon's the best selling IP of all time. If not, it's very close. For that IP is rabid for some sort of evolution of the content, and Nintendo and Game Freak have just not given it to them. So what this studio that made PalWorld has been able to accomplish is they have taken everything that is Pokemon, which is it's a very basic formula. They've taken that, and then they've taken the survival crafting style game of your Rust, the Forest, Ark Survival Evolved, Valheim, all of these games that are quite popular actually, and they've merged that type of game, almost overlapped it a little bit on top of what Pokemon already is. And by merging the mechanics of both of those types of games, they've evolved that type of game considerably. And the fact that Rust or like the Forest style game is such a internet gamey type of game, like very Twitch friendly, like people like to watch it. A lot of the internet likes to play it. Minecraft, such a big deal. It's ripe for it with the appeal of Pokemon and like these type of little cute little monster things that you fight with, and the well-knownness of Pokemon as an IP and as a medium, and then putting that type of game into that type of aesthetic and genre. That's why it's blown up. The unfortunate thing for me is I've never liked Rust or Minecraft or Valheim or any of those like chop the wood, build your base. I can't stand those games. I can't play them for longer than 30 minutes. So that's exactly what happened when I started playing this game. I was like, okay. I start with nothing, and I'm like, when do I get to battle the it took me 20 minutes to craft a Pokeball essentially out of materials, and that was one. I got one ball to throw at, and I captured a little penguin owl looking thing. And I was like, okay, that was cool. I'm glad that I now have I think his name was Hoocrates, like Hoot and Socrates. So that's cute. But I was like, I got my little Hootcrates. So that's cool. But the amount of effort that it took me to get there, it really felt like I was playing Rust or something. And I was like, oh boy, this game is not for me, dude. I just want to be podunking around and going into the next town. And have you heard about the Pokemon Museum? It's up the road. I like that stuff, the stupidness of
it's familiar.
Pokemon.
There's a comfort level, into how Pokemon. Now, did you play it through Game Pass or did you buy it on Steam?
Game Pass.
Nice, yeah. Such a great thing. What about you, Jay? What did you what's your takeaway from PalWorld?
I thought it was pretty good. But again, it's just it's not me. It's not for me.
Yeah.
It's just not for me.
You know what's more than pretty good, and I think it's for me and for you, Brian, and for everybody out there. It's Prince of Persia: Lost Crown, baby.
Dude, Prince of Persia. Like, I'm so glad I played this game. I will tell you guys, I ran into a few technical difficulties when trying to play the PC demo and putting it on GeForce Now, which is supported by GeForce Now. So I ended up, after several attempts to get that to work and not work, local and GeForce, I jumped over to my Switch and I played it on the Switch. And
it
I was
looks
like, this is great.
So good on Switch. This has to be one of the, like we were just talking about, poorly optimized games for Switch. It's 60 frames. It's crisp. It's gorgeous. I can't imagine what it looks like on the OLED. I have the original LCD Switch model.
The OLED, it looks even better. Like, it's just so nice. So crisp.
This game is so, it's a visual feast. Gameplay wise, it's amazing. It's a shame it didn't come out like last November, because I think it would have got maybe some awards. I think it might have edged out Armored Core for that action game of the year, maybe, or something like that. This is
bold.
this is like, I mean, hey, Jeff Grubb said it would have been his number 3 game of last year. And so I think everybody's really hot on this, as hot as they can be for, like, it feels like this is almost kind of windfall to last year. Like, it doesn't really, like, I don't think people are going to, like, remember this come award season this year. Like, they're going to think it came out last year. It just feels kind of like an extra bonus, like after Christmas dinner, you know, like, oh, here's your Prince of Persia as well. In addition to the best year of gaming and Baldur's Gate and all the things that we got.
I'm so happy they went with the kind of this, I would almost would define as a 2D HD, you know, kind of approach, as opposed to like, because there were Prince of Persias that were, because I've played
2D and a half, maybe
2D and a half, but also 3D, like they've done to where you're trying to like navigate through kind of a puzzled room and, you know, get to different locations. And I thought those games were great, but this really, I think, does return it to that force where it can really shine and be that Metrovania. And at some point you wonder if Metrovania adds on, you know, Prince or something like that, where it's like, if they want to establish this, because I've also been playing like Blasphemous 2, and it's like I really
yes,
dude,
yes, brother,
yes, dude.
Now you see why I put that on our indie game list, don't you?
I'm glad you did. That's why I was like, all right, I got, you know, I'm gonna follow this guy's advice and see what he thinks. But yeah, so it's like that 2.5D, and the thing is that there's these subtle things that I always appreciate. Like, it always feels like when you feel like the devs went the extra mile. And it was like, I was just doing this normal parry, and all of a sudden it kicked into this, like, changed the camera angle, and I did this like execution, and I was like,
dude, this game is so anime. It's so anime. Like, he's like, I half expected to just do like a Hadouken or something, like when you're fighting. Yeah, I mean, like, he's flipping around, doing backflips, cutting people's heads off and stuff. You got like cut scenes in the middle of your combat. Yeah, dude, this game's so stylized.
I've been playing it exclusively on my PlayStation Portal. And, it is built for that. Oh man, it looks good and it plays good. So that's my exclusive PS Portal.
Now, this is related to what I'm about to ask. The Ubisoft recently came out and said, "Hey, you guys are gonna have to be comfortable with not owning your games," and this is an Ubisoft game, so it's like, I do think that was a little bit misquoted a little bit. I think they said in a very matter of fact, candid, honest way, things would work best for us if people got a little more acclimated to not owning things and would maybe subscribe to our subscription model, or if things would move in the direction of like all your movies and television and everything, right? You're not getting box DVD sets anymore. I'm subscribed.
He
to
was
Netflix
saying
that
the sort of the stagnation or the delay in the game industry moving to that point,
accept that,
slower than movies and other media, it does not work in their favor in terms of as a business. And so it wasn't that. I think it's been misquoted in that he's like, you all gamers out there got to get used to not owning your games. Like, that's kind of how people are doing it.
They got me. We're all guilty of getting caught by a headline. I was like,
there's nobody in this call that does anything like that to rile people up at all, right? Nobody does that.
Anybody who posts anything online, it's like, why did nobody click on this thing? And it's like, oh, if you change this one word, then everybody will click on it. And
you get the
like,
floodgates. Yeah. I mean, they
like,
know what they were doing. I read the article, and I didn't. Again, it goes back to the outrage that sometimes people just want to have outrage for whatever reason.
I was okay with renting games back when Blockbuster was around. Like as a kid, that was the budgeted way of being able to play a bunch of games because I was mowing yards for video games back then. Like I don't see a difference here in renting.
It's a conflict of interest between gamers, ownership, and what we've traditionally perceived to be of value. Generally, you would go to store, go to Toys R Us, EB Games, like GameStop, whatever, buy a game, have a disc or a cartridge, go home and play it, and it's yours for years. You don't have to worry about it ever going away. Well, rightfully so, there is some concern there because if you do buy and own some games that's not physical, we've seen this recently. These games go away. These people,
people already don't own their games. That's the thing that they don't realize. Even if you pay money for it, they can
half of the games on the
you.
Nintendo Switch. The game is literally physically not on the cartridge. The cartridge is like basically
just a license key.
It's a license key. There's like 1 gig of data on there. Everything else you have to download, the 30 gigs. So gamers, sometimes we just don't think, right?
I own a physical copy of Babylon's Fall that's now useless. See, people are more used to that with online games, but I think that's the way that people understand it. Is like over the server is down, but like games can go away. I mean, you can have a piece of media that
you're buying a license, basically what it is. The format changed, the media changed, and so the day of the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, and you passing your cartridge to your friend, those days are over.
You think the PS6 is going to be an all digital?
I'll be honest, I think probably so. It just here's the issue that Sony has with that is majority of your consoles that you've sold are the disc-based versions, not the discless. But with Microsoft, we're seeing that majority of their consoles sold are the discless version, right? The digital version. So I think Microsoft their Xbox, they'll be okay going on. Matter of fact, they're coming out with a new all digital version of the Xbox Series X. Based on the leaks that we had from the court case and stuff. So I think Microsoft will be okay. They have Game Pass, right? Which is an all digital thing. So people have already just know to accept that that's where the future goes. PlayStation, on the other hand, them and Nintendo are like the last of the Mohicans. And I wouldn't even really say Nintendo because we don't know exactly how many of those Switch games actually has game data on there versus, I'm not talking about the day one patches and stuff. I mean, physically, if I was to take my Switch offline, plug the cartridge in, would I be able to play the game? We don't know because, I mean, a lot of us just hadn't tried. We're just used to having our devices online all time, any and everywhere. Just like I bought the PlayStation Portal. Everyone was complaining, oh, but the internet was like, yeah, but it's an internet streaming device. It's a remote player. So you always have to have that connection. And I've never been anywhere that didn't have any internet access. Yeah. So sometimes I think
that also internet is getting and should be getting better. And
yes,
then
every time
Sony and Xbox and like all these companies have an incentive to hopefully, because like I would love to see some changes in how like they treat internet. Like, it should be a utility in my mind, and then start really just pushing that. Both like from like if you want to just classify it as a national security thing, like let's make sure that people and you see that because I work remote now. And it's like so many people do that now, and it's like, oh wait, like I don't want to go back.
That's a way of life. That's a way of life for us right now. And I'm gonna go out on a limb, right? I'm gonna go ahead and admit something, and I know I'm be screen captured or recorded, but I do believe back in 2013 when the Xbox One came out, I do believe that they were unfairly treated by gamers and by media the like for their always online thing, because at that point in time there was really nobody that didn't have internet access. You're complaining on social media, right, with a device that's connected to the internet about having a device come out that's always going to require you to be online. and I just think it was disingenuous. And of course, Microsoft got dinged for it, for saying, "Hey, we have a console for you." With them, the always digital. I think, but Microsoft, when it comes to Xbox, they've always been like 4 or 5 years ahead with some of their ideas that became popular 5 years later than everyone.
Microsoft, I would say, lost their way with the Xbox One and I think it shows in how they announced it and their marketing around it. Because
we talked about that last week, yeah.
Right. And so, like, to kind of bring those two pieces together, like, I'm with you. Like, always online, having that interconnection means it's a feature that every game developer knows. Hey, this console has internet. I can say we can have this feature, as opposed to like making it optional and making sure the game doesn't need said feature. And that could be cloud compute and processing, like we saw with Crackdown. But it was their messaging and marketing. Like, they didn't know what they were building. And I felt like their shift to be like, we're this platform, was ahead of its time. And is the direction that I see it that's going. But was that they were too soon, and then B, they didn't have any examples as to why this is actually better, right? So like Sony was like, hey, let me hand you a disc. This is how it works. This. Everybody in the world knows how to trade a game, right? Yeah. But what Microsoft should have done, especially with the always online, it's like, oh, here's how you trade a game with us. Hey, Jay, bloop. Hey, that's your game now. Thank you so much. Like, it's that simple. Here's how you do it. Like, people have been like, oh, I like that way better because they weren't lives in another state than I do.
Yeah. They weren't ready. Microsoft wasn't ready yet, because the ideas that they had behind always being online was not only the family sharing thing, that wasn't ready yet. So they didn't explain that, but potentially lower price of games, because they obviously it's cheaper to manufacture and things like that. So cost could have been $5, $10 cheaper. That could have came out. It was a lot of ideas that they had that could have came of that. And I think Aaron Greenberg kind of talked about some of those things. Like I just said, it was just like, if they would have held that idea for a few more years, I think, because it's crazy. Literally the next generation, nobody complained about. I mean, Microsoft came out with an all digital console and nobody blinked an eye. It doesn't matter.
I think the other problem with that show was that, like, they had a bunch of ideas and a bunch of stuff that was featured on the system, though, that like nobody would have cared about that later either, because it's just like nobody's going to Xbox for those things. Like, they were trying to say like, oh, we can be like these other things, and it's like, no, I think in 7 years I'm going to be subscribed to Netflix and Max and whatever. I'm not going to be using your service. So it's like they were trying to get into markets that people were like, no, I don't come to you for that. I come to you for a specific thing. And like games. PlayStation gets that. Why don't you get that? That's kind of the reaction that people had, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I concur to that. I mean, I agree with that. It was definitely their messaging. I still kind of give them a little grace with that, because it's like, dude, everybody flipped out over always being online, even though they're always online. And I'm like, dude, I'm always online. I'm never like, if I can't be online, I shouldn't be in that place. I'm not going to any remote location in the woods or the forest. I always got my phone with me. So if I don't have cellular coverage, I shouldn't be there.
So down to 0 bars, guys. Time to move.
Hey guys, get back. Let's go. It's time to get
back. We are in a dangerous place right now.
So J-Dub, let me ask you: Are you excited for the next entry in either of these two games that I've got behind me that's coming up? Both of these this week,
Yakuza.
Tekken and Like a Dragon, baby. Are you gonna dive into either of those? Or are you looking forward to either of those?
Well, like I told Ginger before, I'm not a big Yakuza guy. I love Judgment and I love Lost Judgment. Those are my games. That's what, to my heart, they speak to my heart. Absolutely, I love that. The Yakuza, I've tried. I just don't.
Did you play the new one, the turn-based one?
No, I didn't.
I would say try that one on. I know I'm gonna say a dirty word, Jay. It's on Xbox Game Pass. You can play it.
Jesus,
on Xbox Game Pass.
I'll attempt.
Because it's very different. I played the.
I'm jumping in to answer your question because of that very fact. Your constant recommendation.
You're gonna love it as a Final Fantasy fan. You're gonna love it, dude.
Game Pass is like it's been a real nice thing because I'm like, all right. Anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off, Kirk, but I was like,
go ahead. I'm so excited.
I'll stream it this week. I'll stream it this week.
All right, sweet. And I'll make sure, like I was gonna say this at the start of the show, is like I would like get your YouTube or wherever you stream. I'll just make sure I get your links and I'll drop them in the description so you guys can follow Jay over on Twitter and wherever. Like you said you haven't posted on YouTube in a while, but I'll make sure that we can hopefully can send some people your way.
It's been a month or two, but I need to get back.
Lord knows I can't stop posting on YouTube. So it's like I'm like, hey, yeah, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
What about Tekken 8? Kirk put up a review on his channel. It was great review. Kirk, you do great reviews, dude.
Thank you.
And so
I mean that's kind of like for most gamers, it's like, of course, it's a day one. It's a fighter, right? It's like it's Unreal Engine 5. I mean, come on, like it's next generation. Yeah. So I'm there day one. I'm there day one.
I feel like I don't know what it is, but something about Bandai Namco's flagship fighters, because I think they make Dragon Ball as well, and I'm not super into that one.
Mm-hmm.
But that one has their audience for sure. But Tekken and Soul Calibur, just whatever it is, man. When we get a new one of those, I get like a little warm, fuzzy feeling, like
I'll tell you why.
Feel it in my chest.
I know why, and I'll tell you why. It's the nostalgia feeling that you had when you bought your PlayStation 1.
But why don't I feel that for like Mortal Kombat though? Is the question. It's something about Tekken that I'm just like, oh man, we're back.
I'm gonna tell you, it's probably because, and I don't know how old you are, but back when Mortal Kombat came out, it originated on the cartridge-based system, the Sega Genesis and the SNES. And so if you missed that generation, then that really wasn't near and dear to your heart. By the time you came, there were the other.
That is true. That's true. Tekken was really peaking around like 3 tag. 4 was kind of the ugly stepchild that people either love or hate. And then 5 behind me is just absolutely amazing. So that's a very good point. I guess
it depends on the generation that
Mortal Kombat peaked earlier. So for an older audience, they remember playing on.
We remember part 1, baby. That was that will always be the cream of the crop because
Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter.
Yeah, those two created. I mean, it just created something that can never. It
created the ESRB is what it created.
Yeah. Well, Mortal Kombat. To be fair to Street Fighter, Street Fighter's okay. Like they're not.
No one had a problem with Street Fighter.
They're not corrupting the youth or anything. Yeah. I do think this Tekken game
that spine out of that.
Well, it was what it was is cartoony graphics versus digitized type graphics. And Mortal Kombat was one of the first to do that. It wasn't the first. There was a game called Pitfall. No,
there was also that one about vampires,
Darkstalkers.
No, maybe Darkstalkers. It was something where it was like it had these like actresses, and it was like
Night Trap.
Night Trap. There it is.
Night Trap. Night Trap.
That is a deep. That's an old reference.
Deep cut.
Maybe not. I guess not a deep cut because I'd say that game's well known, but that goes pretty far back.
Yeah,
that's a good one. This Tekken game is amazing. Spoiler: I gave it a 10 out of 10. I was really thinking. I just went through the first Yakuza game on PlayStation 2, and I was thinking that this week I would be knee deep in Like a Dragon Gaiden, preparing for Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, because the story of those games is literally days after the new game's gonna start from Gaiden. So I was like gonna be just mainlining that, and then I get Infinite Wealth in my hands. I've already got it pre-ordered, physical version. Sit down with it. So I thought I would just be playing nothing but Like a Dragon for like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
I can't stop playing Tekken, man. I can't stop playing Tekken. I'm like, I still gotta play Like a Dragon Gaiden before I play Infinite Wealth. It comes out Friday. I can't stop playing Tekken. I don't know what to do.
This weekend for me is all Grand Blue Fantasy, baby.
Oh, Grand Blue Fantasy.
I am so excited for that game.
Can't wait for that game. I got the collector's edition coming. Nice. I pre-ordered it.
Wait, is that dropping this weekend?
Yeah.
The 28th, baby.
The 28th.
What? So we got 3 smashed on each other. This is a crazy weekend for games. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, dude.
All 3 of those at the same time.
As long as I'm healthy, dude, I'm gonna be playing some Relink because it is that good.
And I'm glad they released the demo. I'm glad they released the demo because that brought in people that didn't know about Grand Blue Fantasy.
Right.
That I mean, it basically opened the door. People like, hey man, I never played this game. I saw everybody talking about it, and it is freaking awesome. I'm gonna pick it up. I like to hear that.
The one weakness it has that I think will catch some people off guard because we do kind of live in this age of crossplay. PS4 and PS5 have crossplay for Grand Blue, but it doesn't cross over to PC. So you like if you have friends and you typically have a PlayStation and a PC, sync up before y'all all purchase the game so that way y'all can play together. Otherwise, you might end up kind of being a little bit like, oops, but our community here, we've been talking about it, and I'm gonna pick it up on PS5. If you pre-order, it actually goes up the 28th. Otherwise, it officially launches on February the 1st.
Yes. So. Speaking of pre-ordering, if for anybody who's watching, if you're planning on getting like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, go pre-order it because and I usually don't advocate for pre-orders, but they have 2 jobs that are exclusively available with the pre-order. So if you know you want it, if you don't know you want it, wait. Maybe get on sale, but if you know you want it, which I know I want it because I played the first one. Oh my god, this game's gonna be amazing. Go pre-order it so you don't have to pay extra money for those extra.
And it's
jobs.
in Game Pass, right?
No, it does. It's not gonna be day one Game Pass. It'll come. It's kind of on that like 6-month delay with the Yakuza games. For anybody who's interested in that franchise, go play Yakuza Like a Dragon, which is kind of the first in this turn-based reboot. The gameplay is very, very similar. I mean, this new one seems to just be taking that and sort of perfecting it. Kind of like that Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom type of evolution. Like, it's not a ton because you can't really make a good thing that much better type of deal. But yeah, those 2 games and then whatever the third one is, I think are going to be like seen as like a trilogy masterpiece at some point. So I'm really excited for this second edition in that set.
As we wrap up the show, because we have a few more minutes, I have one pressing question that I always just think is going to be interesting because every time I've talked to Jay, we've always had just really good conversations, always just down to earth gamer. But that does not relate to any tweet that like I generally see pop up on the stream. Like, can you?
Satya Nadella. He's got PlayStation covered. He's bringing the games for PlayStation. Satya got us. He's holding it down.
2027. Xbox is done. So, like, what got you started in that, and like, what keeps you going? Like, there's I get entertainment out of it. Like when I joke, like it's like people are like, oh, the fact that I get called a pony and an Xbot, like I'm like that's high praise.
You pony bot,
baby. Like it's like But I find
entertaining. That's why I wore the toad hat. He's
a neutral. He's a neutral.
So funny because no, not really. I'm freaking like Nintendo fanboy. Like great. Like I'm so angry at Nintendo, but yet I keep sending them money, so I'm a big part of the problem. But it's just like I find a lot of like I get entertainment out of it, and as soon as it gets like too real, then it's like just whatever. But it's like I find a level of entertainment I appreciate, and I get entertainment from your tweets. But like to me, I'm like I don't feel like pissing off like half the internet today. Like what keeps you going? What got you started more than anything?
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, man, I've been gaming forever. And I started watching YouTube videos on gaming. And then Titanfall Princess and this guy named Iron Wolf, they asked, we were just in a party chat on PlayStation. They were streaming. I didn't know they were streaming, but we just had conversations just like you and I have. And it was like, hey man, you're a great podcaster or whatever. And I'm like, I'm just sitting here talking about video games, chatting. And so they took it and uploaded, and then other people started asking me to come on their podcast and things like that. And the rest is history. I've always been a troll. I just like having fun and just being, a smart ass.
Are you a stand-up comedian?
No, I'm not. But people tell me I should be because I just,
it's very therapeutic, and I know people who aren't comedians who think of like, wait a minute, comedians need therapy. I'm like, yes, we do, and we go up on stage and we let it out.
Twitter is my stage.
I feel like you'd be really good at like some sort of commentary, like how they used to do like Wipeout. And they had the guys, they'd be like, oh, that looks like that's gonna leave a mark, Jim. Like, I feel like you'd be like really good at doing like color of like making fun of people.
Yeah,
I think that you would have a special talent for that, or like, because that's what you do. You're like, oh, Phil and Satya back at it again. Like, whatever. I do have a request. If you could, like, I think it's all right, and if you go back and watch our episode from last week with Alex, which got very interesting, by the way.
Wild.
Yeah. I was actually very.
Did he take his shirt off and stuff?
No.
We didn't let him, but if we'd let him, I'm sure he would have. I was actually fairly critical of Xbox in that I said, like, you know, they've got it as it's like when you're watching your favorite football team and they're down in the fourth quarter. It's like you got to start making some plays if you want to get in the game, and so I think it's very okay to be critical of Xbox in that as somebody who's trying to come from behind, they're not showing enough effort and enough fight. So I'm okay with you sort of lampooning Xbox as a corporation. But just for me, buddy, can you lay out the games just a little bit? Because Ginger and I were watching the Indiana Jones reveal the other day, and we were like, "This looks amazing." And then I see tweets coming from you. They're like, "It's garbage ass." Like, and I'm like, people made this. Like, people spent like 4 years of their lives like working on this. Like, if you want to mess with Xbox, like, for being a big corporation and not being able to like have a good message, but yeah, come on, man. All games are good. All games are good.
People find out about me, right? On Twitter, again, my character. I'm the biggest a-hole ever. But then they go to my YouTube channel, or then they you know, see me podcasting, or they just see me streaming. I'm generally playing a lot on Xbox. You know, I'm the guy that was streaming Sea of Thieves day one. I'm the guy that played Grounded day one. I'm the guy that played Redfall day one. I'm the guy that pretty much every single Xbox game I'm playing day one. I'm putting in the time and effort in. So therefore I get to criticize it. I get to give my thumbs up or my thumbs down. I'm the one that gave out tons of Xboxes last generation. I'm the one that tried to get them to win NPD. I'm the one that have been pushing them. And, you know, you get to the point where I came from there. I came from the Xbox. Xbox was, in the 360 era, was my main platform, even though I had a PS3, but it was my main platform because, I mean, it had Gears of War. I mean, it was the place to play. That's where everybody was.
Yeah, PlayStation 4 benefited, I think, from the success of the 360 because, like, you saw their infrastructure, their networking, your players and your friends list. Because it was like you felt like 360 was like on point. Yeah. And then PS3 was like, you got to jump through all these little hoops to do these things. And it's like, oh, they just made it easy over there.
Yeah, well, Sony screwed up so bad with the PS3 era. They decided not to try to do some crazy stuff again and to just do what everybody else was doing. And that led to the PlayStation 4 and making it easier. And the rest is history. But yeah, I game a lot on Xbox. I'm a big PC guy. You know, I have a
you gonna play some Indiana Jones, aren't you?
I'll be there day one. I'll stream
good.
Day
Yeah. It looks real good.
Now, granted, you know, I have the comedy. The comedy needs to be there. You know, if I'm not antagonizing my friend, about a lot of people don't know, the people that I'm going back and forth with on Twitter, these guys are actually my friends. Me and Tim Dog, we're real life friends. Me and Post Up, we're real life friends. Yeah, me and all of these Xbox guys, we're all in a DM.
Oh man, my boy Post Up is struggling with this.
Exactly.
Today.
Exactly. That's just what we do. You see Tim Dog coming at me, I'm going back at him. We're behind the scenes. That's just what we do. Me and King David, right? Me and the Iron Lords podcast. You see me poking fun at them and them poking fun at me. I was just on their podcast the other day. I've been on their podcast freaking since the beginning. That's just what we do. But a lot of people see only the Twitter side. Granted, I don't mind, right? Because it's a character, and I just realized, hey, it's kind of successful. Everybody likes my, the humor, the tongue in cheek. But I mean, to be honest, a lot of the stuff that I say, the reason it hits is because, yeah, it may be 90% over exaggerated, but that 10% of truth kind of hits, and that's what gets people angry.
Right. So do you feel like Xbox going third party? Do you feel like Sea of Thieves is going to jump over to PlayStation? Because I think that's a win. I would say if you have a multiplayer game, it should just be everywhere. Like, it's like, why are you cutting out. Like if I was Microsoft,
yeah, like what do you really believe? Because you've been posting a lot this week about. Because you know that Satya quote was taken out of context. He's talking about the. And he's like, I don't know.
Listen. Okay. If it's just one time, okay.
Answer for your crimes. Answer for them.
We have him on three different interviews in video, not just a quote. 3 different videos saying the exact same thing. Saying it now, you can take and say, well, what he really meant to say, and this is why I always joke with Post Up Nim, because it's like a lot of times the Xbox guys, like Phil, Aaron Greenberg, Satya, Matt Booty, they'll say something with their own mouths, right? And we record it. And then right after that, the Xbox guys will go and try to translate what they said. And I'm like, hey, I don't need a translator, right? They're speaking plain English of what their intentions and what their plans are. Who am I to take what they said and interpret it with what I want it to feel with me? That's cognitive dissonance. And I always use that word when I'm speaking of that. If PlayStation, right, if their leadership goes out and say, hey guys, we're going to get out of the hardware business. We want to do X, Y, and Z. I am not going to translate that into being anything outside of what they said. That's their job to do that, and that's up to them to take the consequences of that. But the real side of me thinks Microsoft just became the world's richest company.
They did.
Their job is to make more money.
Yep.
What would make them more money than to open up their games selling on PlayStation and Nintendo, 2 of the largest install bases in the world?
Especially with their publishing power, they can get.
They are the de facto.
They could get 20% instead of 30%, right? Like it's like you could come and say, like, "Hey, we have this massive value."
But you know what? You're going to do? It's not even about the 30% and 20%. It's about the fact that games that have already came to Game Pass, that already ran its course on Xbox, will now have a second life on a 2 install bases combined that are roughly 250, 300 million potential customers. Not saying 300 million people are going to buy them.
Right. Hi-Fi Rush is going to do crazy numbers on Switch. People are going to love that on Switch.
I hope so. I hope they buy it. I hope it's like, you know, especially if you don't have an Xbox or a PC, like one of the things that I'm always like is like, yeah, like not everybody's as blessed as I am to have everything at their fingertips, right?
Yeah.
And and I have a wife that's also like, we have a little budget and it's, you know, this is what we're going to spend on gaming and stuff like that. And that's, you know, that's awesome, but not everybody gets to have that privilege. And that's where I want more people to be like, oh, especially imagine like the thing and we need to wrap up, but the scenario I always kind of envision, which is kind of funny, is like, imagine you meet a new friend. You're like, hey, I made a new friend. Oh, turns out you're a PlayStation guy. I was an Xbox guy. Oh man, we can't play together. Like, it just nowadays it's like, no, just play because games offer that as a feature now. What people are going to do is they're just going to return to the games that offer that as a feature, so they don't have to deal with like hey guys, we all want to play the new Call of Duty. I guess we all have to go buy an Xbox. No, it's not a problem. Play whatever the heck you want, you know?
Well, I will say this, right? I will say this. The only people who are against this idea, I mean, what Satya says goes. This guy is the owner of the company. What he says is
he's been on record saying that he delegates to Phil though when it comes to Xbox.
Now, okay, so now we're just using semantics because Satya is the one that tasked out. Right now, he's giving interviews. He's on a world tour on all these interviews saying PlayStation and Nintendo. He's saying names. We don't have to interpret. He's saying this is what's going on. And we have him in 8K on multiple interviews. So I'm just taking him at his word. This guy could be out there lying. Yeah, sure he could, but I don't think he is, right? So think about it. The amount of money that they're going to make by putting their games on PlayStation and Nintendo. Now, in the Twitter sphere, we say, we don't care for Sea of Thieves. We don't care for those games. Those games are trash. That's what we do, right? But clearly, there's going to be a large block of people who do. And they're not on Twitter. And they're not on YouTube. They're not content creators. And they don't care. They just want to play games that's on their platform.
Oh, I've seen this game. I'm going to check it out. Yeah.
The Xbox hardware fanboy, right? The people who are holding the line, my brothers, right? My Xbox brethren. They are fighting because they don't want to admit that the console war has been over, right? They don't want to admit. They still have
Phil
this
Spencer
vision.
says it's over.
Phil Spencer said it's over. Everybody, I mean, we know it's over, right? We see MPD every month. We see the world sales over in Europe every month. We know it's been over, right? It's like 3-1 going on 4-1 now. But they refuse to concede, and so they're hoping that by the Activision Blizzard deal being purchased, that Satya and Phil will reverse course and just focus on the hardware and just put the games exclusively, and that's going to bring in a bunch of people. But Phil said it's not. He said Starfield can be a 11 out of 10. It won't change. Nobody's going to sell their PS5. Nobody's going to put.
But if we're talking about words, and this is the final thing I'll say on it, and if y'all want to wrap up, go for it.
Yeah, this would be a good way to wrap up. Yeah.
If we're talking about listening to words out of their own mouths and taking them at face value, like I said, Satya has said, yes, I'm the head of the company, but when it comes to Xbox gaming, Phil is the guy. I delegate to him. He said that in court. They kind of pushed him on it, and he was like, all right, yes, the buck stops with me, but really Phil's the decision maker. I delegate to him. I trust him. And then knowing that Satya trusts Phil to run the Xbox division, what Phil has said is we're going to evaluate on a case-by-case basis whether a game should be multi-platform or whether we're going to keep it exclusive. And yes, some to a lot of the IP that we hold, we're going to keep exclusive because that's part of our commitment to Xbox gamers is you are in our ecosystem. You went out and bought our console. And so we are going to sort of give you a return on that investment. So it's important for us to legitimize and justify the value that is Xbox, the Xbox ecosystem, if that's where you're engaging with your games. And so games like Starfield, games like Indiana Jones that aren't a Sea of Thieves, that aren't a Hi-Fi Rush, I think that Xbox, and particularly Phil, because he's told us as much, Elder Scrolls 6 is another example. Phil is going to keep those locked down. We're not going to see those on Nintendo and PlayStation. And anybody who says otherwise is just taking something that they're saying about a wide swath of other IP that, yes, it benefits them to put on a bunch of platforms. They've told us directly what they're going to do with those very specific IP that are in Bethesda and in the machine games, the tentpole franchises that they want to have under their umbrella. I don't see them letting those go, and they told us that they're not going to let those go when it benefits them to keep them under Xbox.
Here's the thing. This last thing I want to say is there's this need to have faith on the Phil Spencer, every single word and details of how he say things. And I don't really do that, right? I don't really care. I look at exactly what a person's doing and what a company's doing, not harping on the words, because if we harp on the words, I have a laundry list of stuff that I post on Twitter all the time of what Phil Spencer said and what he's done and how he's retracted and did all this stuff, right? It's business. And Phil Spencer is that PR piece in that connection between gamers and the corporate side, which is Satya Nadella. Now, Satya Nadella, the CFO, Brad Smith, those guys are the corporate guys. Those guys are the reason the company is making $4 trillion.
Some money, yeah.
Right. And it would be disingenuous of me as a gamer to hamstring this company for my feels when I see the numbers. I see the numbers that no one's buying the hardware at the same pace as everybody else. The percentages are down across the board when it comes to the games and all that stuff for Xbox. And I see them making... Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you. No, you're good. Yeah. You didn't cut out at all.
I got a phone call. Okay, I'm back. I didn't know if you can hear me. But yeah, I think that we can't be selfish. We see where this is going. They're out to make money, and they're going to make boatloads of money by putting, and it's not just picking the games that you really don't care about and holding the ones that you care about near and dear to your heart. At the end of the day, it's all going everywhere, and they're going to make more money, and they're going to be even more the world's richest company, and it doesn't matter. You're just going to have to open up to it.
They're see.
They gave you Game Pass where you're getting all your games day one, day and date. So that's for the hardcore gamer. That's for the Xbox gamer.
That's their platform, in my view. Like,
listen, Game Pass is Xbox. Xbox no longer exists. It's about Game Pass. Phil has said that multiple times, even with their marketing material. it's Game Pass. You rarely ever see Xbox even mentioned anymore.
When we can play Starfield on PlayStation, perhaps I'll start.
Okay.
I hope so. I really, and that's what I advocated for back when it was launching. Everybody's like, it's like, no, I want Starfield to come. It was to PlayStation.
The
I think that'd be great.
Actually, it was. Listen, you got Jeff Grubb, you got all of these other guys coming out. You know, you even have Cole Eastwood coming out saying, "Yeah, I've heard this and this, and I knew this." All these people were sitting on this information from last year,
Jez Corden,
knowing this. Jez Corden.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, when the guys of the guys in Xbox are saying it, dude, listen,
we'll see.
You know, forget me, right? I'm just a fanboy, but when those guys, when you got Cole saying it, come on, man. Like,
I'll wrap up with this kind of as a final thought: is that I don't think Xbox has any exclusives. They publish everything on PC. Like, the minute that happened, then you're like, basically, it isn't exclusive.
It's
excluding.
Just one piece of it.
It's just excluding. And so they publish in all these different locations. Now, do I think it's going to happen like that? Probably not. And honestly, I'd be perfectly fine, because as a developer, a lot of people get frustrated. They're like, it takes more work to put it on every platform. Yes, it does. I'd be perfectly fine if we ended up being just some kind of standard time exclusive. Is it 2 years? Is it like, what's the fall off to where you're like, yep, that value over here, we're going to go ahead and also put it over here. And that's what I hope for the future. But ultimately, time will tell. And I'm very curious to see what PlayStation does, because they're starting to say PC, mobile, cloud, like to the point where I think that will be interesting for us to see. They're testing out the PS5 in the cloud. I'm very excited about that. That's why I was asking Jay. I messaged him about the Portal, and I was like, hey, okay, you know, I liked how it has the controller over the Logitech G Cloud, which is what I use currently. But I was like, does it support GeForce Now? And the answer was no. And I was like, oh, that would, like, if it did, that would be like, I'm ordering that now so I can just have it hooked on my PlayStation and I can do my GeForce Now because it's got the Sony screen and the PlayStation controller. Perfect. But alas, we're not there yet. So more flexibility, I think, is going to be where people are just where people's dollars are going to be, because the thing I always kind of wonder from a gamer's perspective, I saw a lot of frustration moving into this generation. Like, it didn't have the big enough leap. We didn't see network infrastructure and friends list and everything just improved to where you're like, oh my gosh, the only thing that we really felt was loading times. And the next generation, like, how do you get people to buy in, and like, how do you make it so that it is such a leap that people are like, this just feels like it's the lines of generations have started to blur. And it took 3 years before we actually started seeing, you know, like Final Fantasy 16, PS5 now forward. It's like, okay, you know, so how do you get those early adopters next time when everything is cross generation and the technical jump isn't, you know,
it is a night and day like it used to be. Yeah, it is not night and day like it used to be. And the developers are going to focus on those multi-platform games, those services games that bring in the money. The Fortnites are going to be there, the Apex Legends. Look, we still got 2K, we still got all these games are still making cross-gen games. And until they stop, they're not going to focus on next gen only. Yeah. So we're not going to see those gaps, those big leaps.
All right. Well, guys, Jay, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Be sure to check the link in the links in the description for all Jay's content. Kirk as well. He'll be tagged, and you can go check out What's New Video Games for all his reviews. Especially check out his Tekken review.
Type in Tekken 8 review on YouTube, and it'll come up. That's the best way to find my channel right now.
That's why I was like, I keep going like, man, every time I have to type in your channel, YouTube has no concept of it.
Yes. Type in Tekken 8 review. If you type in Tekken 8 review right now, it's going to come up. It's going to be a Nina Williams pick with a little bit of boobies. You'll see it. 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10, baby.
Check that out. And everybody go play Like a Dragon on Game Pass. Experience what that franchise is all about. If you have a Game Pass subscription for free, instead of having to pay $70 for the new game, you can see what's so fun about that. That's all about.
Thanks, guys, for the likes. Be sure, if you're interested in the audio version of this podcast, check the top link in the description.
Give J-Dub one more plug before he's out.
Plug away, Jay, and we'll cut to the music.
Listen, it's been a great show. It's been great. Thank you again for the invite, and I had a great time. You guys can find me on Twitter at JDubCity16. I'm trying to keep you guys laughing with the gifs and the memes. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. All right, guys. Love you guys, and we'll see you guys next here in 2 weeks. We do this every 2 weeks. Bye.
Epic Loop Radio. Epic Loop Radio.